Elvis, a name more recognized than that of any world leader or Hollywood superstar. Elvis. He sold more than 1 billion records, starred in 31 feature films, and appeared on dozens of TV programs. Elvis. He's been the subject of countless TV documentaries, hundreds of books, and thousands of newspaper and magazine articles. He is worth more today than he was at the peak of his career. Elvis Presley still generates well over $500 million in revenue every year. So much larger than life is his talent, fame, and influence that Elvis can never really die. In fact, many believe the king still lives, and his reported death in 1977 was the only safe way for Elvis to retire. For many years, rumors have persisted that Elvis is still alive. In a few moments, you'll meet private investigators, former federal agents, and Elvis experts who have startling evidence that the king still lives. August 16, 1977. The entire world mourns as we are told that the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, is dead. There were documents, the open coffin, news reports, an endless stream of mourners, and even a death certificate. But had Elvis left the building forever? The author of this book, Is Elvis Alive? Gail Brewer Giorgio, believes that Elvis staged his own death and is still alive today. In 1977, she began writing a novel based on this premise called Orion.
Well, it was August 16th, 1977, and I, like most of the world, had heard that Elvis Presley had died. About 3 days later, after writing several articles on Elvis for the newspaper, I decided to write a novel. It was called Orion. It's a fictional story of a superstar who hoaxes his own death. I wanted to try to capture the soul or the essence of someone like Elvis Presley. Orion was ultimately sold to Simon & Schuster. I received a large advance of $60,000. There was going to be a big PR promotion, etc., on this book, and the book was released. But a short time after it was released, I was receiving telephone calls that my book wasn't to be found. A lady from Pennsylvania called me, and she said that she had gone to the store to try to get it, and the woman who owned the store said 2 men in business suits had come in, bought all the books up. I called up New York. I would leave my name. They wouldn't call me back. You know, what was going on? I mean, why pay an author? You know, this is quite a few years ago, and $60,000 up front was a nice sum for a first author. But why pay an author and then you don't put their books back in the store? I mean, logically, it didn't make sense. Well, they wouldn't return my phone call, so I even called the distributor. And he told me, he said, they told me to pull the book.
Meanwhile, an investigator for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department had an amazingly similar experience. His name is Monty Nicholson.
Gail Giorgio's book, Orion, and my book, The Presley Arrangement, were written at approximately the same period of time, at different ends of the continent. Gail Giorgio and myself did not even know of one another. And yet, we wrote the same identical facts surrounding the mystery of Elvis's alleged death from different independent sources. Other coincidences that occurred. My book, The Presley Arrangement, as did Gail's book, Orion, disappeared from the shelves shortly after it was published. When I questioned my publicists about this phenomenon, why friends of mine would go to a bookstore and try to order the book, and they would actually refuse to order it, he said in 35 years in the publishing industry, he'd never heard of such a thing. When I talked to Gail Giorgio, she was getting the same story about Orion.
Were the fictional stories in the novels Orion and the Presley arrangement too close to the truth? Almost immediately after Elvis's reported death, puzzling questions left unanswered began surfacing.
Why did the Memphis police officially close the files on the death of Elvis Presley before it was even medically or scientifically possible to determine why and how he died? Why were all the stomach contents destroyed pre-autopsy? Remember, this negates a thorough autopsy. Why was there never a coroner's inquest? Why was the Shelby County District Attorney's Office never officially notified to determine if there were any violations of criminal law? Why have all the photographs taken at the death scene disappeared? Why have all the notes prepared by the medical examiner's office, why have they disappeared from the official files? Why have all the toxicology reports disappeared from the official files?
Gail Giorgio obtained a copy of Elvis's autopsy report. Together, Gail and I viewed this report. In 18 years, I've viewed many autopsy reports, and I've been present during several autopsies myself. So I'm very familiar with what goes on at an autopsy, and I'm very familiar with what goes in an autopsy report. In these reports, they're very comprehensive. They give organ weight and size, skin coloration. They give things like the percentage of blockage in the subject's cardiovascular system. They give the coloration of the skin, the weight of the person, whether or not there's any foul play or any evidence of foul play. And usually these autopsy reports are 40 or 50 pages long, and they're very in-depth. The autopsy report that I viewed with Gail is 2 pages long. It lacks any of the significant information that is normally found in an autopsy report. And during the course of any normal investigation, this autopsy report would be incomplete and unacceptable. It's my opinion that a coroner that would even present an autopsy report like this should probably be investigated himself.
Many have suggested that the body on view in the open casket at Elvis's wake was not Elvis Presley at all.
People that went by the body in the coffin were heard to say that does not look like Elvis Presley. They were saying the nose is pugged. Elvis had a very classical nose. They noticed beads of sweat on the body in the coffin, and, you know, dead bodies don't sweat.
Gene Smith, Elvis Presley's first cousin, remained close to the king throughout his life. He also did not believe that the body lying in state in the open coffin was that of his cousin, Elvis Presley.
When we viewed the body for the last time, I stood there quite a while looking at his hands, and of course he was always breaking bricks with his hands. He had calluses on the bottom of his hand and big old rough-looking knuckles. His nose looked kind of puggy looking, and his right sideburn was sticking out straight out looked about an inch. And his hairline was